Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of my Holistic Healing for Anxiety and Depression podcast. I'm so excited to have the special guest on today. I swear, when I met this woman, it was just an amazing networking event where we met. And when she shared her story, I was just like, oh my goodness. I don't know. I felt completely like connected to her already. So I'm so excited to have her on. So today I have Heather. Heather is a certified health and burnout recovery coach who helps overwhelmed women manage stress, restore energy, and reconnect with themselves. After her own journey through burnout, PMDD, and Hashimoto's, she now uses a holistic nervous system based approach to support women struggling with the physical and mental effects of chronic stress. So, Heather, welcome to the show. So excited to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I am just very grateful to be here and speak to everyone.
Yeah, and I really love, first of all, that you're not just like preaching out of with nothing behind it. Like you actually have walked the walk, you talk the talk, like you've gone through your own journey. So part of the mission with my podcast is to really share with people the real stories of real people and to share how they overcame that. So I think you're such a great example of that. So I'm just so grateful to have you here.
Thank you.
And Heather, would you like to go ahead and just briefly introduce yourself and kind of share a little bit more about who you are, what you do, and who you help?
Yeah. So Heather Saez is my name, and I am a certified health coach. Like you mentioned, I'm working with women who are overwhelmed to manage their stress and try to reconnect with themselves again, right? When, I know we'll get into this, but when I was going through my own struggles, I felt I just wasn't myself and I didn't have joy anymore. So I really want to help women get back to that place where they can feel happy in their body and just not struggle anymore. It's not what we're meant to be.
Right, right. You mean we're not meant to be in this sort of hole of doom and gloom all the time?
Yes. It's
Oh,
horrible.
interesting. Whoa. It really is horrible. And I love what you said too about reconnecting with yourselves. I think that's such an important point, especially for women. I feel like a lot of us have a lot of roles we play in society, and we're often giving back to others or giving back to work and giving back to all these things except ourselves. So I just love what you're about with helping women, especially in that way. So before we kind of dive into your story and what you went through, I'm just curious for you, how do you personally define stress and burnout, and what is the difference between the two?
Yeah, so the simple way to put it is that stress is short term and burnout is chronic. It's the
Mm,
easiest way I can explain it. But understanding that stress is normal. Everybody has stress. It's a part of our everyday life. It's just, there's nothing we can do to avoid it. We just have to manage it. And
mm,
the goal is really to be able to get through that short-term stressful event or situation or time in our lives and not let it affect you on a deeper level. But
mm.
when someone is chronically stressed, day after day for an extended period of time, that's when it becomes burnout.
Okay. I like that distinction. The kind of like stress is like short term and then burnout's sort of the long term outcome of that. And how do you know the difference, like in terms of the signs and symptoms? Like what does stress look like versus burnout?
Yeah, and it can be different. Everybody's different and they experience things differently. Um, but in stress, some of the common things might be like you're a little irritable, maybe you can't fall asleep, as fast as you normally would, or you're just not sleeping as well as you used to.
Mhm.
Maybe, like me, when I go through a stressful event at work or something, I'm getting headaches every day. And that's just a sign that my body's telling me, hey, you're stressed, we need to do something to manage that. But with burnout, symptoms can become more severe and last longer. So, some common symptoms of burnout are just fatigue, waking up every day just chronically fatigued and it doesn't go away, even though
Hmm.
you've slept 8 hours or you rested all weekend.
Hmm.
Brain fog, maybe you can't focus as much as you used to. Low motivation,
Hmm.
and maybe you don't want to do the things that you used to enjoy doing, you know? For me, I noticed when I was in burnout, I would just want to come home and go to bed and scroll on my phone, So I notice when I'm
Mm.
scrolling a lot, I'm like, okay, hold on, I gotta tone it down, calm down. But yeah, like when those things are happening day after day, that's a sign to me that you're going through burnout.
Right. It's more of like a lasting fatigue and sort of being checked out and like not really having a lot of it sounds like not having a whole lot of energy and just
Hmm.
overall just chronic like almost like a shutdown phase in a way.
Hmm. Definitely.
Right. And I definitely relate with that. Like when I was in healthcare as a nurse, definitely, I think a lot of healthcare people can relate to this of like, waking up and just feeling constantly tired, feeling constantly stressed. And I mean, more ton just the regular stress, like you just feel
Hmm.
this overwhelm of like no energy. And so, it's interesting what you're saying because I know stress is like normal, it's part of life. And we talk about fight or flight, and there's stress that helps you accomplish things in the day-to-day life. Um, I guess when is it time, I suppose, to start getting help? Like, I'm curious for you, like, when do you know that there's burnout and when you're supposed to start like addressing something, I guess.
Yeah. So I could share a little bit of my story and when I decided like, okay, I think it's time to maybe get some help.
Mm,
Um, for me, I didn't really know that I was experiencing burnout. Back then I didn't have the knowledge that I have now. So, and I feel like a lot of women might not know that they're in burnout when they're in it. They're just struggling to get through and they're just trying to survive, right? But for me, I think the point where it finally hit me and I realized that I had to do something was when I had a panic attack. And it was a panic attack
mm,
at work.
mm-hmm.
And I had had panic attacks prior to that, which I'm not really sure if I knew at the moment they were panic attacks, but that one that happened at work, it just hit me harder because there were people around and it was out
Mm.
in the open and it was like, oh my gosh, this is becoming a bigger issue now.
Oh,
And
wow.
I couldn't manage it on my own anymore. I had been trying for a year prior to that to kind of, manage my own struggles and I couldn't. So that was like the light bulb, like, hey, you know what? It's time to go to the doctor. It's time to get some help. Um, if a woman is waking up day after day and feeling like this doom, I literally felt like I was in a hole and I just couldn't dig myself out. And no matter what I tried, I just couldn't feel better and feel back to myself. And if you're struggling and going through that, I don't know what your limit is. It could be a month. Mine was a year, which was, I think, was way
Mm.
too long. I
Right.
think,
That's a long time.
yeah, like
Wow.
nobody should suffer that long. Whatever your limit is, I think that's when it's time to say, okay, I need to get some help. See your doctor, see a therapist, get that support system around you and start reaching out and don't keep it internally because that makes it even worse.
I think women are so good at not asking for help. Like it's like
I
our
know.
superpower. We're just like, no, nothing's wrong. I don't know. I don't know if it's
Hmm.
denial or I don't know what it is, but I mean, I don't know if you have any ideas on that, but we just don't want to ask for help. And so I can't imagine for you a whole year going through this like waking up of like no motivation, no desire. Like it's so crazy what we do to ourselves.
I know. And I don't know why we do it. But when when you're in a depression or, that kind of mental headspace, it is scary,
Mm-hmm.
and for some reason, you just feel like you're going through it alone. Um,
Right.
and I think for me, I just felt like the people around me didn't understand. I do have a
Mm.
very supportive husband. My sister is very supportive. But my husband had never gone through a depression like I was going through. So I kind of felt
Mm.
like if I asked for help or shared more, like I didn't think he would really understand,
Right.
So it's very difficult. I totally understand, but I think once I asked for help,
Mm-hmm.
it was like kind of a pressure off my chest.
Wow, that's amazing because yeah, we
Yeah.
fear that support. It's like we fear looking vulnerable or we fear being vulnerable or we fear looking weak. But I love that once you overcame that fear, it's like you got that whole relief. You got
Hmm.
that pressure off your shoulders, off your chest. And I
Hmm.
want to sort of back up a little bit because I'm so curious about for you, like, because yeah, I want to dive into that, like dive into your story a little bit and just learn more about, what led up to that? Like what was the stepping stone to that panic attack point for you? How did this start?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, it could go back many years, but I think the peak, of where it was really getting, worst was probably in my last job. I had a very demanding, stressful, I was a warehouse manager, and I was probably from about 30 to 35 years old is when I
Mm,
worked in that job.
mhm.
And like I said, it probably started way before that because I've had other very stressful jobs, right? But for whatever reason, this one was just the peak. Um, and I was just trying my best to chug along and get through the days, but I didn't know anything about burnout. I didn't live, a healthy lifestyle. I
Mm,
wasn't managing my stress,
mhm.
so I was the person that would show up to work all the time. I was in charge. I had to be there. I didn't have any boundaries. I didn't put myself first. I didn't have me time. So I think just all of that built up, every day
Mm.
dealing with all that. And then in 2020, when the pandemic hit, that really sent me over the edge. That led to even more severe things like being diagnosed with Hashimoto's and PMDD.
Mm.
But I really think it was a combination of things, right? The stressful job, not having the boundaries at work, not putting myself first, the stress from everything happening in the world, and just, yeah, not having that lifestyle that promoted a healthy physical and mental health.
Right, right. And what I'm hearing a lot of is when you were at work, it's kind of like with the no boundaries issue, especially, it's like there was always this giving and giving and giving away of your energy and not really paying attention to what your needs were necessarily, not honoring what your needs were, and
Hmm.
just constantly, dedicating all of yourself to your work, which I feel like that's
Hmm.
a really, really relatable thing to dedicate so much of our like our time and commitment to the work and then ignore sort of like our own signaling in our body. And then over time, that accumulation, finally your body's just like, hey, I've had enough. And then it sounded like it manifested with the Hashimoto's and then the depression, the PMDD. So it's really interesting how when we ignore the body long enough, it will make itself known to us that it needs help.
Hmm. Oh, yeah. Yeah, don't ignore the signals, the little signals, the headaches, the irritability, like those little things that happen every day. Don't let them build up because that's your body trying to tell you something like, hey, like I need support.
Right, right. And I'm curious because what do you think is the reason for you personally, why that boundary issue was there of like not being able to say no to things? Because I feel like that happens a lot with women. Like a lot of us struggle with the boundaries and we want to keep, you know, I guess I don't know if it's like we want to be productive or we want to seem a certain way at work, but what do you think for you started off that boundary setting issue?
I think about that a lot and I try to pinpoint like when did that start for me? And it started a long time ago. Like
Mm,
back in my 20s, I remember feeling like I wanted to be important at work. I wanted,
mm,
my male bosses to think that I was valuable,
mm-hmm.
so just always feeling like I had to prove something, but then I liked being the person in charge and with the knowledge and having all the answers. I always liked that. So
Right.
then I also had these internal goals. Like I was always a goal getter, every year with my goals, and I would have quarterly checklists. Like I was always that person, just very organized and, oh, I got to hit these goals. and I pushed myself too much, I think, and it's not that anybody was asking for me to be this high achiever. I just wanted to prove to everybody and myself that I could be.
Right. Right. And it's that sort of almost like we get that value from, I guess, seeming productive in some ways or from achieving or from being that go-to person. I mean, I relate a lot to this. I was also like that sort of go-getter like in my childhood, and the way I got approval from people was if they said I worked hard and if I got A's on a test or something, or I got that praise and recognition. And I just feel like this is something so many people I know are relating to. Like we have our sense of self-worth externally. We're sort of externally driven from people's approval or people's recognition. So saying no can feel really, really scary because it's almost
Hmm.
like we're saying no to getting we're saying no to getting love or approval in some way.
Right. Or like we're letting someone down, you know,
Right.
uh, and that it doesn't feel good to let someone down. So yeah, it's a tough thing. It's a very tough
Right.
thing to deal
Right.
with.
Yeah, it goes really deep. And I appreciate you going
Yeah.
deeper with me because I feel like, especially when we get to the root of stress, like it's really important. Like it's important to know how to manage the stress, how to manage the burnout, which we will get into in just a little bit. But I also feel like understanding why the behaviors got there to begin with and understanding how that came to be can also help us sort of break those patterns. So it's interesting to hear how that sort of accumulated for you. So I appreciate you sharing that. And I know a lot of people can relate to that. And so, okay, so when you got burnt out after 5 years already of working in this warehouse, which is crazy, so what was the first thing you did to get help when you got like the panic
Yeah.
attack? Mhm.
Yeah. So around 2020, the world is shut down. I was laid off. Actually, let me back up first. So I ended up leaving that warehouse job
Mm-hmm.
and finding my dream job at the time.
Hmm.
So right before the pandemic hit, I had just started that dream job. And I was so excited because I thought, okay, I'm out of the warehouse. I'm gonna, get better. I'm gonna get out of this burnout that I was in. And I was feeling really good about the new job. And then the pandemic hit and I was laid
Mm.
off.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, oh my gosh, I just got this job. They're not going to call me back because I'm brand new. I was just there for 3 months.
Oh wow.
So
Oh my God.
that hit me, kind of put a damper on things. But luckily, they called me back and I went back to work in July of 2020. But we were working from home.
Mm.
So working from home for that whole year and just not having social time, not being able to travel. I loved to travel. I didn't
Mm.
travel, like everything changed.
Oh yeah.
And that just really sent me into a spiral. I think
Right.
that's when really the deep depression came and the panic attacks. In that depression and the panic attack started, and just the way I was feeling, my body just didn't feel right. I just
Hmm.
knew something was wrong. And, I was having this chest pressure and the fatigue, and I had to get help, right? I just knew some doctor has to help me. So I started going to my primary doctor. And there was a lot of
Mm.
investigation, like, oh, let's get you a chest x-ray because you're complaining of chest pressure. Nothing
Hmm.
was wrong. So then it was, oh, go to this doctor and get these tests. Nothing was wrong. Finally, I
Oh geez.
stumbled upon an allergist, and that allergist is the one that did, 100 different blood tests.
Oh wow.
And that's how I found out I have Hashimoto's.
Oh.
Um, so that kind of gave me some clarity on things, but that I was still in this depression, right? I was still having panic attacks. It didn't solve anything.
Mm.
So I ended up talking to my gynecologist and telling them, like, I have this depression. It was all the time, but it was getting worse. the week before my period. And I
Mm.
started tracking it. I had my calendar printed out and I would write down all my days and what I felt on each day. And I started noticing that, yeah, my panic attacks were worse that week before my period. My depression was worse. My physical pain was worse. And I took it to the gynecologist and I said, can this be related to hormones? Or, I had to do a lot of my own research. Another thing I wanted to make sure that I mentioned, like, I had to advocate for myself. Like, no
Mm.
doctor was really guiding me through this, right?
So
Like,
sad.
I,
Right.
I know I'm just stuck in this hole, right? And trying to dig out, and like, nobody is really guiding me. So I had to do a lot of my own research and
Mm.
tracking my symptoms and that kind of thing. So again, I went to the gynecologist and he said, for sure, you have PMDD. So then I had this PMDD
Mm.
diagnosis, which explained a lot more, right?
And what does PMDD stand for anyone who doesn't know what it is?
Oh, PMDD is premenstrual dysphoric disorder,
Mm-hmm.
and it's kind of like PMS times 1,000.
Oh yeah.
You know?
So lovely, so great.
Yeah. So the doctor said, you know what? I think an antidepressant would really help you. It will
Mm.
make your life, better. Your depression and your panic attacks, might go away.
Mhm.
And I pushed it off for a while. And
Right.
I said, you know what? Let me try. Now that I had some answers, I thought, okay, there's some things I can do. I could try a gluten-free diet. I can try a dairy-free diet. I can try exercise, meditation, all the things.
Hmm.
So I tried that. And I just still, was stuck in that hole. So that one panic attack
Mm.
at work is when I decided, you know what? I'm going to take that medicine.
Oh, got it.
Yeah.
Right. Like it went to
So
that point even if you did other things. Right.
yeah, yeah. I was trying all the other things for, probably about a year,
Oh, wow.
and it just wasn't enough. It's not that they weren't helping. I just think it wasn't enough to get me out of that hole.
Mm.
And, I'm glad I went on the medicine because it did help me get back to normal life. I could return to work and not have a panic attack in front of everybody.
Right.
So I'm really glad that I did it. you know, um, because yeah, sometimes you just need some extra support.
Right. Especially something like depression, it could be, I don't know, it could be such a big hole. Like I could feel like even though you're doing all these things, it's just like this cloud over your head that just
Hmm.
won't go away. It could be very challenging. I mean, there's a reason why people harm themselves or end their lives when they have depression because it's so hard to sort of get out of it. So if you do
Hmm.
need support and you tried other things like to be fair, like you did try other modalities, but if you really want to get more support, sometimes medicine is helpful and there's nothing wrong with that. It's like you just have to do what you think is supportive to you in the moment.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. I mean, to be honest, I didn't want to go on medicine.
Mm.
I tried to push it off as long as I could, and that's because when I was younger, my mom had, panic attacks. I've seen her have them. And I think that's what also
Mm.
triggered me about that panic attack that I had at work because I watched my mom have a panic attack at work. We worked together. And I
Oh.
watched her have one in the bathroom one day, and I still think about that, and it was scary. And
Oh, I bet.
so, oh my gosh, yeah. So I watched my mom struggle with like trial and error on medicine, right? And I think
Mm.
that's why I was hesitant to try it because I thought, oh my gosh, like, is it going to work? Is it going to give me symptoms that I don't like? So I really wanted to do my best to learn as much as I can about healing myself without
Right.
it. And
Right.
I did that, and I'm so glad because now I have so much information and I've been through it myself, so I can share that with other people. So I'm so glad that it worked out that way.
Right. Right. And now you help other people and you help give them tools. So I'm curious for you though, are you still taking medication or are you kind of like at this place where you could just use the tools to help? Like, how long did you need that?
Yeah, so I went on medicine in 2021,
Mhm.
and what are we, 4 years later? I
Mhm.
can now say that I am officially off of my
Oh, wow.
medicine.
Oh, congrats.
Yeah, all doctor guided,
Right. Yes.
Um,
Please wean off of your meds with the guidance of your primary care provider, please. But anyway.
yes, yes. I talked to my gynecologist last year and
Mhm.
I told her I wanted to start considering going off the medicine.
Mm,
Considering it.
mm-hmm.
And I think I was ready because, you know, the world, there's still a lot of crazy in the world,
Right.
but the pandemic was over. That was a big fear for me.
Right.
That was over. I was in my new dream job. Life was stable for me. And I
Mm,
said, okay, this might be a good time for me to try it and see how my body reacts. So I went off of it very, very slowly. It took
oh,
me an entire year.
oh, wow.
So
Okay.
yeah, I went very slowly with what the doctor told me. And yeah, as of June 1st, so just 20 days ago, I'm officially off my
Oh,
medicine.
wow.
So
Well, congrats.
yeah,
That's amazing.
yeah, thank
And
you.
I think this offers a lot of hope because I was a psychiatric nurse for 8 years and I was literally taught, people who have depression, they're going to be on meds for the rest of their life. And that's like what we were taught as nurses, basically, in the hospital, medicating people. So I love that you're this example of like, yes, medication is supportive. And yes, some people do have to take meds their whole life. Nothing is wrong with that. But also at the same time, if you feel like you're ready and you don't want those side effects and you want to move from the medication, it is possible to wean off and do other things, which I think is amazing.
Hmm.
Like congratulations for
Yay,
sharing
thank
that.
you.
And I'm curious, so I know you have a very holistic approach to burnout and stress relief. And so what do you think is necessary to help you wean off of medication? What sort of holistic practices or what parts of your life do you need to look at in order to heal from stress holistically?
Yeah, it can be a lot. It can be very overwhelming.
Oh yeah.
But I think
Thanks
I
for
think the
being
first
real.
thing is yeah. The first thing I think is to just be aware.
Mm,
And that's being aware of things that you're doing, like your lifestyle habits
mm,
that could be contributing to stress, right?
okay.
Like you might think a 30-minute scroll on social media is no big deal, but really like that could be affecting you more than you think,
Oh man.
or
Right.
I know, sorry. Or, like, are you, in the office all day and you're super busy and you notice that you're skipping lunch because you just don't have time? Well, though, like
Mm,
day after day, skipping lunch and not stepping away and taking a break,
right.
or are you not getting outside during the day? I used to have a coworker that would come out at 5 o'clock and she'd be like, "Oh, this is the first time I saw daylight."
Oh no.
And like we
Oh
we
my gosh.
can't live like that. So just being aware of when you're doing those things and then being aware of what your body is telling you. Again, like are you having a
Mm,
headache every day? Is it, is your stomach hurting? Like whatever physical symptoms your body is giving you, like that can be a sign that something, needs to change or something is wrong. Um, and then I think the other thing that's really important is to just have a support system,
mm,
right? Like I know it feels like you're going through it all alone, but you
yeah.
don't have to. You don't have to do that. Have your most supportive friends and family by your side. Make sure you have a good medical doctor. I went through so many doctors until I found one that allergist and my current gynecologist like are my key. Like it took me a long time to find a good doctor that understood and was willing to listen to me, right? So you
Mm,
have to keep trying. And then a therapist, of course, is always like I still have a therapist,
oh
and I
nice.
probably will for a long time because I think it's just beneficial whether you are going through depression right now or not.
Right.
And then, having a good coach like that can also be beneficial. So Yeah, being aware and support system, I think, is a good place to start.
Right, right. And I love that you mentioned the awareness piece because it is really important to notice what behaviors you're have like what parts of your lifestyle just aren't working. We always go into these patterns and we have these habits and we don't even realize that we're not taking breaks or we're not going outside or we're not eating or we just don't notice. So I love that first piece of like, hey, just look at yourself, like look at what you're doing and what is working and what's not. Like, what do you do in your day that causes you to feel horrible? Or are you even, kind of doing an intake? Are you sleeping enough? Are you eating enough? Like, are you drinking enough water? Like things like that. So I love that piece. Um, and then in terms of asking for support, I don't know why it's so hard. Why is it so hard?
I know. It's almost like embarrassing, Like
Yeah,
I think I
yeah,
was
it is.
ashamed
It
that how
is.
dare I be in a depression, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Because we have to be these strong women that, we're the moms and we take care of everything. Like, so when we can't for a moment in time, it's almost like we're ashamed of ourselves.
Right.
And it's we shouldn't be, we have to ask for help. Like
We're human
I don't
beings? What?
know. I
Like,
know.
whoa. I mean, there's also stigma also around having something like depression or burnout. We make it mean, I think, in our society that we're, yeah, like kind of like what you're saying, we're weak, we can't handle anything. Like, yeah,
Hmm.
people shouldn't have depression. Something's wrong with you if you have depression or
Hmm.
burnout, something you don't have enough drive or you're just not, productive enough, wherever it
Yeah.
is. So there's a lot of stigma around that, which is unfortunate. But I do think that the times are changing, like especially with the
Yeah.
younger generation, they love talking about mental health. We millennials love talking about mental health too. But yeah, I think there's definitely a more openness, which I think is amazing. So hopefully it'll encourage more people to get support and help, which is so important. And then talk
Mhm.
to me a little bit more about coaching because I know not everybody really knows what a life coach or what a coach really is and how is that different from therapy. So I'm curious for you specifically in your role as a stress and burnout recovery coach, how do you help people and how's it different from therapy?
Yeah, so in my experience with therapy, it can be a deep dive into emotions, dealing with talking about things that maybe are a little uncomfortable for you sometimes, like your childhood traumas. And,
Mm,
therapy is more on that side of things, the mental health, right? Me as a coach, I am not a therapist.
hmm
I cannot claim to help anyone with their mental health.
mm,
That is specifically reserved for a mental health specialist. Um, and I am also not a medical doctor, right?
hmm
I'm not going to diagnose anyone, but I am there to support someone that is going through something. So, for example, let's say you are having depression, anxiety, panic attacks, and you're seeing a therapist, and that's going great. But maybe you just don't feel like it's enough. Maybe you need more personalized, lifestyle coaching, right?
mm,
I'll give you this example because it's easier to for people to comprehend. I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's, and
hmm
one of the doctors told me that I should try going gluten-free, that
Okay.
a gluten-free diet would help my thyroid perform better.
Okay.
So that's when it's a good time to hire a coach because the coach is going to guide you through, okay, what does gluten-free mean? What can I eat? How am I going to fit that into my lifestyle? Because the doctor doesn't
Mm.
have time to hold your hand and go through that. They're just saying, go gluten-free and see you later, right?
Right. Bye.
It's
Right.
it's unfortunate they don't have the time.
Right.
So a coach is there to work with you and create a personalized plan, you know? And
Mm.
again, everybody's different. Everybody could have a different goal, a different plan, what works for them or not. And the coach is there to help you figure that out, you
Okay.
know? So,
So
yeah,
more
it's,
about the like lives, your actual day-to-day lifestyle habits and taking a look more at like what are your actual lifestyle habits and what do we need to change and almost creating a personalized plan on how to implement those changes in a way.
Exactly. Yep. We will figure out what works for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's especially important when you're in burnout because I went through this, like trying to research all the things, right? Like, oh, this wellness person on social media told me I should do this, and this one said I should try that, and oh, I should try this new green juice. I went through all those things. And
Oh,
you know what
wow.
happened? I just got even more burnt out.
Oh,
I
no.
was so overwhelmed with all this
Oh,
information and knowledge coming in. My brain was going to explode. So a coach will work with you to figure out what the best things are for you. That's going to be like your bestie walking through this, because yeah, it can be super overwhelming to try to figure out, oh, there's just too many things. Like, no, that's too overwhelming. We can't add more things to your plate when you're burnt out. You'd actually need to do less.
right, right. Especially when you're burnt out, you don't even have the energy to do a whole lot. So it would be
Yeah.
very helpful to have someone guide you through and actually just help make a plan with you and basically help you take the guesswork out of it so you're not researching so much on your own, which could be a whole rabbit hole and you have to go through
Mm-hmm.
so much trial and error. So I love that they give you that individualized support. And so let's say you're working with someone one-on-one, do you look at like basically their eating habits, their sleeping habits, like what specific parts of their day are you helping them with?
So, me specifically dealing with stress and burnout, I'm not looking so much into what you're eating.
Okay.
I do have a lot of nutrition knowledge, but again, I'm not a registered dietitian and I'm not going
Mhm.
to tell you what to eat.
Okay.
If you want to incorporate that into our coaching, we can, but I need you to tell me I want to go gluten free and then I can help guide you.
Right.
I'm looking more into what are your habits throughout the day so I can kind of we can pinpoint together like what is causing your stress? Are
Mm.
these habits causing your stress? Are you incorporating enough like nervous system regulation? Are you grounding? Are you getting enough sunshine? Are you doing the right things at work, kind of looking at the overall, your whole day. What are you doing through your day, your habits that are creating the stress or eliminating the stress?
Okay. Oh, I like that. I like that you really walk them through that. Like, okay, these behaviors don't seem to be, they seem to be contributing to your stress. And let's add in new tools or let's sort of change certain ways you're doing things and see what helps you calm down that fight or flight mode, what helps you feel more nourished or grounded. Um, so that's awesome. Like I don't normally hear about coaches who specialize in stress and burnout a whole lot. I was a life coach myself, but a lot of times life coaching is more about mindset and more about helping someone achieve goals. So I love that you help
Mhm.
people specifically with stress and those sort of habits. Do you look into mindset at all too? I'm just curious, or
Yeah,
mhm.
I think, I think mindset kind of can go with all kinds of things, right? Like
Mhm.
it can be related to, if you're trying to lose weight, if you're trying to eat healthy, if you're trying to get out of burnout, like it can relate to everything. So that is something that we do go through
Mhm.
because mindset blocks are going to come up no matter what you're doing. So working through those together. And that's why, in my coaching program, I have, messaging access because we might hop on a call once a week or once every other week, but what about that time in between? That's when you
Right.
need the mindset tools, right? Like
Oh,
I'm trying to
absolutely.
implement this habit, but I'm getting stuck. I'm talking myself out of it. I'm, getting lazy, whatever it is. So that's when the messaging access really comes in because yeah, you need that mindset support. You need someone that's part of being a coach is that encouragement, that support to kind of keep you moving forward.
Right. And I love that that goes into what you're saying about asking for support because some people, unfortunately, our families or our friends, some of them just aren't maybe appropriate to ask for help with our emotions. Some of them might be contributing to the stress. And so it's nice. I know my mom is she's a big contributor to my stress sometimes. So it's nice to have or your partner, so it's nice to have someone who can really like they're trained in this and they know how to help you and they're holding that space for you in a way that maybe your friends and your family just might not be able to, or they might have
Mm.
judgments around you. It could be really tricky sometimes asking for friends and the support of friends and family. It could be tricky, especially if you were the one they went to for support and now you're asking them for help and they're like, what? So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
So I love that you can offer that support to people. And for any women, especially who are right now experiencing some symptoms of stress or burnout, what do you think is a great first step for these women that you would recommend?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what your goal is, right? And are you trying to get through this on your own, or
Hmm.
are you at the point where you're ready to get help, right?
Mm,
I think if you're just in the beginning stages and you're trying to get through this on your own, my advice is to start small. Again, like don't try to add in all these things that are just going to make you overwhelmed. Start small. Maybe start following what feels good to you.
mm.
If meditating for even just 3 minutes in the morning feels good to you, do that. Follow that. If doing yoga, look, I live by the beach, so I'm gonna shout out my yoga on the beach ladies.
Oh, nice.
If that feels good to you, being out in the fresh air by the ocean and doing yoga, if that feels good, follow that. Like, just small things can really add up. Like, healing starts with consistency. So, just following the path of those small things that make you feel good can be really, really beneficial. But if you are to the point where, you know what, I can't take it anymore and I need some help, you can contact me. I'm available for free consultations. Like the point is to talk one-on-one and see, can I help you with what you're going through? There's some people that it just doesn't make sense to hire a coach, but
Mm.
it could be something that's beneficial. So it doesn't hurt to reach out and ask.
Right. Right. Just go ahead and ask for that support, and
Yeah.
just get that support right away. And but of course, if you are wanting to try things on your own, definitely like tune into your body, notice what helps you feel nourished, whether it's like what you said, meditating for a few minutes or just walking out in nature, which I know you and I we love nature. I think nature's our
Hmm.
therapy. It's a really powerful or connecting with other people, just trying to find what helps to nurture you. Actually, setting aside that time for yourself is
Hmm.
one thing because you're most likely in burnout or stress because you're not actually nurturing yourself, which is a lot of us women, we could relate. So actually saying, yes, I'm worth this time, saying that to yourself, and then doing that consistently can go a really long way. I know for
Hmm.
me too, it's my non-negotiable to meditate for 5 minutes a day. Um, Ideally, I like meditating like 15 to 20 minutes a day is like awesome, but 5 minutes is like my non-negotiable minimum. So just trying to find that minimum for you to help you
Hmm.
feel, give back to yourself in some way. So I love that
Yep.
you keep it like what you're saying, Heather, is like you're just keeping it really simple and accessible so that we could just start somewhere, you know?
Hmm. Yep.
Yay. Amazing. And where can people find you if they're interested in working with you or getting support?
Yeah. So you can find me online at heathersaezcoaching.com. And I'm also on Instagram and TikTok at Heather Saez Health Coach. Like I said, I do offer one-on-one personalized coaching. I'm free for a discovery call. Let's hop on for 30 minutes and chat about what you're going through, see if I can support you or not. Um, yeah, my goal is just really to help women dig out of that hole and just feel clear again and energized and just get back into the world and just be the badass that you were meant to be.
Oh my God, I love that so much. And I love seeing how you shifted your own life too. Like you sort of stepped out of that hole and you're able to, you became a coach, you found the life, the job that was like really resonant with you. And I'm gonna move my cat. But yeah, you found a job that was really resonant with you, and you left the job that wasn't resonant with you. So I love that you listened to your body and you found really what truly lights you up. So I feel like that's one thing I kind of want to mention too is like, and you could speak to this a little bit too if you'd like, knowing what really aligns with you and connecting with that version of yourself, like connecting with your desires, because a lot of us women tend to be givers and we give so much that we don't even know what we want. So is there anything you want to add to that of like how do you help women to know what they want or connect to them, reconnect to themselves?
Yeah, I think for whatever reason, I think a lot of women need a purpose. We need to
Mm-hmm.
feel like we have a purpose or, some stronger sense of like being. And I was listening to a podcast the other day, and the lady was explaining, how do you find your purpose? And just let's say you have two options for a decision, right? One of them maybe makes you feel kind of like a pressure in your chest or your stomach kind of feels icky. And then the other one kind of makes you feel like, oh, free and excited and like the pressure is gone. Like, follow that. You have to follow that. Like, that's just the only way you're going to figure out, what excites you, what your passion is, and it could change 50 times. I don't know. You just have to keep following that path of what lights you up. Yeah, I think that's all. It's as simple as that. It's very complicated, but it's as simple as just following that what lights you up.
Oh my gosh, I love that. And it really can be simple. Just like notice when you ask yourself, do I want to continue this job? And if you
Hmm.
tune into your body, what does your body do? Does it contract and do you tighten up and you have like anxiety in your chest? Or are
Yeah.
you opening and are you releasing and you're feeling sort of
Yeah,
expansive or joy in some way. So I
exactly.
love that so much. Like trust that internal compass that you have, is what it sounds.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yay. Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Heather, for spending your time with us, for sharing your story, for imparting your wisdom. And I will share the links, you guys, for anybody who's wanting support right now. I'm going to share Heather's links below in the description. But thank you, Heather, so much for being here, and I appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. I look forward to seeing you at one of your Qigong classes soon.
Oh, thank you. All right. Bye, everyone. I'll see you in another episode.
Bye.